They stay vigilant so we can sleep peacefully. They stand guard so we can be at rest. They put their lives on the line so we can live ours without fear. But who looks after the hero's heart? Welcome to Hero's Heart with Chaplain Dan Middlebrooks, President and CEO of Chaplaincy Care Incorporated, which according to Psalm 28:7, focuses on protecting the hearts of our heroes, our first responders. Learn more at chaplaincycare.org. And now your host, Chaplain Dan Middlebrooks.
I'm Dr. Dan Middlebrooks, and I want to welcome you back to Hero's Heart. Hey, it's been a great time getting things ready for our next episode, and I'm going to refer back to the very first one that we began as we started talking about the heart of the hero and what that actually means for our first responders, our law enforcement, our fire and rescue, our EMS, our medical, our military, and our security. And I said this principle is that if the heart comes apart, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what type of uniform that you have, the car that you get to drive, the neat technology that you may have as far as at your disposal. If the heart simply comes apart, everything around you is going to fall apart as well. So we've got to do everything we can to protect the heart. And that's why I want to be able to start back and kind of go back to what I said earlier about how do we do this, but it starts first with understanding some of the things that we've got to do proactively in order to protect our heart. Now, I referred to a picture in our first episode about the difference between a garbage can and a garbage truck. And when we look at those two things, a garbage can is something that, eventually can get full, but you have to dump it out in order for you to put more stuff in. It's kind of a natural thing of what I call the daily dump. You just got to get rid of the trash. But when a person approaches their life as a garbage truck, it simply means that they just start taking in the garbage and compiling it and consolidating it and pushing it back. And problem is it's not just their junk, it's kind of like everybody else's junk and all the stuff, and they just keep pushing it down to where 20, 25, 30 years later, when they're about to retire, they think, well, now I can deal with my stuff. And the problem is the hydraulics have broken, the situation has gotten worse, and all throughout most of your life at this particular point, because of all of the garbage that you've had to carry around, you have developed a type of Stinkin-Thinkin. You may not have even known it because people around you know it, but you have gotten so accustomed to it that you no longer smell it, you no longer hear it, you no longer identify with it. For you, it's just a part of your normal life, but your normal life is not normal to anybody else. So I want to take some time to be able to provide for you what I call a basic biblical principle that helps us to understand the impacts of hoarding the hurts and storing up the past pains. Luke chapter 6:45, that's kind of the verse that we're going to be looking at and considering as we begin to move forward in this episode. It says this, that out of the mouth the heart speaks what's inside of it. Now, that makes perfect sense because what comes on the outside of you is really what you have stored on the inside of you. A famous missionary by the name of Hudson Taylor was preaching one time, and when he kind of frammed his hand down on the pulpit, he shook the glass of water that was right next to him to the point to where it tipped over. He now picked up the empty glass and looked at it and looked at the congregation, and with a marvel of an epiphany, he says, "What a great lesson. It reminds us that when the world shakes us up, what's on the inside of us is going to spill out to everybody around us." Well, that's very true, especially as a first responder. You're in a world that is always shaking you up, always stirring up the issue. And what's on the inside of you is what's going to come out, because what comes out of your mouth simply exposes what's in the heart. So how do we move from spewing to speaking? It starts with one powerful word: attitude. Dr. John Maxwell said it this way: it's not just your aptitude, but your attitude that will always determine your altitude. And from that, we realize that in the midst of our life, there's going to be times to where our attitude is going to be on display. It's kind of like your reputation. Your attitude is going to go before you and says, here he comes, here she comes. And people are either going to be glad to see you, or they're going to lock the door and turn off the lights before you get there. I love what Abigail Adams tells us about what that attitude looks like. It's about a process of moving in a direction of always being diligent in seeking. I'm going to explain that in just a few moments. But when we look at our attitudes, there are going to be times where we're going to need some attitude adjustments. And that helps us to move from the daily grind of growl back into where we need to be and how we approach life by doing what I look at again as sort of a daily dump by checking our attitude and making sure that we're good. So let me give you about 4 quick attitude adjusters that will help you to begin to modify some of that stinking thinking that I know all of us sometimes have. The very first attitude I want you to think about is that you need to have a teachable attitude. I talked about Abigail Adams just a few moments ago, but let me say something that she talks about in the teachability of this. She says, learning is not obtained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor and attended to with great diligence. What's she saying? Teaching and a teachable spirit just does not necessarily come natural for many of us. Like I tell many of our young men and women, hey, the teachable spirit means that it's what you learn after you know everything that makes all the difference in the world. Because we should always be learning in life. If you're married, you're always a student of your spouse. John Maxwell, as I referred to earlier, says that leaders are readers. That means that they continue to have a ferocious appetite to learn something that they don't have. The environment that you're under, when you're going into with law enforcement, fire and rescue, there's a lot of things that you have to learn in order for you to do your job effectively. You've got to be able to engage with the community. You've got to be able to handle the traumatic event that's right in front of you, whether it's fire or being fired upon. Wherever that is, there's a lot of things that are beginning to wrap around you to help you to develop a situational awareness. Well, what would happen if we developed a situational awareness for our attitudes? In that we would always then constantly be learning about ourselves as far as that self-awareness. Learning about others, because it's really about being the student of other people, our environments, but most importantly, our opportunities. To me, a great teachable attitude will always provide the open doors for the future horizons, because you simply want to be able to scan and do more than simply just be comfortable with what you have and who you are. So the teachable attitude is the first one, but there's a second one. It's the adaptable attitude. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest minds of our age, basically said the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Let me ask you this. When you are in a precarious situation, let's say you're stuck in traffic, and you're in that process of just waiting for something that's just kind of growing along. I know that back in my time in the military, when I was stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland in 2004, 2006, my most angering moments was stuck on 495. I mean, the difference of leaving the house 15 minutes could be the difference of 45 minutes to almost 2 hours in the wait. It was a time of frustration, but I had to learn to adapt to the environment that I was in. I could do a lot of the books on CD and audio books and things of that nature to keep my mind active. I could make that time productive. Now, what I could do is I was learning how to shift, adapt, and overcome, to shift from being pouting and problematic to something that's being a little bit more productive and progressive in that momentum. Now, later on in one of the other future episodes, we're going to be talking about that adaptability, learning how to shift in life through a program called Core Value Index. And I can't wait to talk to you about it, because what a tremendous program that is, to learn and teaching us how to engage with people, to be energized in life, and what we need to do to protect that precious area of our energy, of how we are able to move forward and not go backwards. But change is going to be an important part of that, because the adaptability means that you're not going to be stuck in that, what I call the rigid ruts of ruin. And the rigid ruts of ruin basically start impacting our relationships. They start impacting our careers. They really start manifesting themselves in the areas of our failures. My friends, listen to me. It's not if you fail, it's just when you fail, and what you do with that failure is going to make a big difference in your life, but also of how we can get stuck in a very dangerous rut of trauma, and how trauma can keep us at a place that we don't need to be. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is something that debilitates us from being able to, we're literally stuck. We are unable to adapt to the environment. However, I like what one counselor kind of put it. She said it's more PTSD, post-traumatic stress decision. And what that means is we make the decision whether or not an event in our life is going to debilitate us or it's going to develop us. Our choice. We can either run from our foe of trauma all of our life, or we can simply see trauma as a companion that is now walking with us in life, that is now teaching us about ourselves through life, and how we can now adapt, not going back to an old normal. That's insanity. It's going back and realizing that you need to step forward to a new normal. That is adaptability. George Bernard Shaw says this: those who cannot change their minds simply can't change anything. So you've got the first two of being teachable and adaptable, but there's a third attitude, and it's being leadable. Growing up, my father, Lloyd Middlebrooks, impressed upon me a very important principle of leadership when he said, Dan, remember, if you are unwilling to follow, you make yourself unfit to lead. That means I've got to be willing to realize that I am always under authority. Somewhere, sometime, even though I may be in charge of people and directing them here and there as a CEO of Chaplaincy Care and the Relationship Leader LLC and a lot of things like that, I may be leading people, but I also realize that I am under authority. In my case, as a Christian, I'm under God's authority with my nonprofit organization, working with the authority of the board. There's a lot of things that help us to keep accountable, but also to keep us responsible to making sure that we don't go off the deep end. Because if we have to lead others, we first must be willing to lead ourselves. And that means that we need to follow those that we trust along the way. Leadership in this process is not simply made in a day. This is a leadership style that's daily made. And it's that authority and direction that we take from mentors that we trust that will help us to become the leaders to lead others best. There's a last attitude, and I believe this one right here is the most crucial out of all of them, because you got the teachability, you got the adaptability, now you've got the leadership portion of that, being leadable. But the last attitude, I believe, is what fuels the first three. That's why I saved it for last. It is an attitude of gratitude. We live in a world of givers and takers, and as first responders, you have a call and a desire to protect and serve. You're always giving, you're always reaching out, not only going places where others are afraid to go, but you're willing to give what others are afraid to give. Your time, your talent, your skills, and if necessary, you're willing to give your life. You know that shield that you carry on your chest reminds you that one day you may be the very shield for those that you are entrusted to protect. And so it is the ability to give. But I want you to know that in the midst of a thankful heart, of a attitude of gratitude, you have to understand the difference between contentment and discontentment. Let me explain what I mean by that. When we are discontented, we tend to do at least three things. One is that we want the things that we don't need. Number two, we begin to discount or devalue the very resources that we have. That can also go in relationships. And number three, we begin to doubt that God will actually provide His best. Now that last one, as I walk as a Christian, I realize that God says, I will provide all of your needs. He never promised me my wants. And if I begin to become discontented with what I have, I simply say, God, it's not enough. But in the midst of that, if I develop an attitude of gratitude, I put everything in a unique perspective that says I'm thankful for what I have, and I'm going to be grateful for what I give. I want to give you a challenge as we sort of bring this to a conclusion today. I want to give you a quick challenge that is a 7-day challenge about this last attitude. Because again, like I said, this one kind of fuels all of the rest of them. But if you look at the next 7 days, when you get up in the morning, I want you to say this: Lord, I am thankful today for... Now, I'm going to stop there for a moment, because there's some of you that may be listening and like, well, I'm not really the religious type of person. Well, I want you to start out by at least saying, I'm thankful today for. You may be, kind of watching and seeing, checking out this Christianity, maybe kicking the tires and saying, does this thing really roll? But for those of us who are Christian, those of us who are men and women of faith, I'm going to challenge you. I want you to start, and all of us, begin by saying, Lord, I'm thankful for, and then I want you to come up with at least 3 things. Not 1, not 2. I want you to come up with at least 3 things that you say, I am thankful for, and list them out. Now, don't do the same ones every single day. That's kind of cheating, and that's actually lazy. So come up with 3 separate things every single day. Because I guarantee you begin to start looking for the things in the day to be thankful for, you will not run out of it. It's what you simply focus your mind on, because it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter the job that you have. It doesn't matter the position that you go to. You will always carry your attitude with you. And if you start out every day, I guarantee you will find out, if you start out with that first part, that Lord, I'm thankful for, you will never have to worry about getting up on the wrong side of the bed, because you'll be getting up with the right attitude that starts with a thankful heart. Take a moment to consider those 4 very simple attitudes, because when we change our attitude, we begin to not change just the heart within us. We begin to change the atmosphere around us, and that includes the people that we engage with every single day. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the Hero's Heart. And next week, as we start getting in, we're going to move not just with the attitudes, but we're going to start asking the question, why is it that we have guardrails and lines down the road? I want you to be thinking about that question, because when we get back next week, on Monday, we'll be able to unpack that question with an understanding of why certain things are important, not just to keep our attitude in check, but to keep our life from careening off of an edge. Thanks for joining me on the Hero's Heart. And remember, that which you protect on the inside will simply be manifested by the graciousness that you will be able to give on the outside. If you guard your heart first, you will be able to serve others best. God bless you as you go into this day.
You've been listening to Hero's Heart with Chaplain Dan Middlebrooks, President and CEO of Chaplaincy Care Incorporated. Learn what you can do to protect the hearts of our heroes, our first responders, at chaplaincycare.org.